G'day friends, welcome to day 22 of Inktober 2018. The prompt for today is, all my school teachers are odd-looking creatures with floral, feline, and fairy-like features. So this one was pretty leading as well. I think there are some prompts in the Daisy list that have a lot to work with and some that are, I just feel like a lot more open to interpretation. But at the end of the day, I think all of them, can be explored. But this one I kind of just kept as simple as I could. I think getting towards the end of Inktober was a bit of a moment for me to look back at the stuff that I'd already worked with before and kind of try some of those things again, and also trying to mix up some of the styles. So as far as maybe I did a really loose technique, and maybe I really did a really illustrated, very detailed technique, seeing if they couldn't contrast the styles of illustration in one piece. So that's kind of what I went for today, and gave Daisy a very illustrated, very detailed kind of look just right there. And then behind her I had four of her floral fairy feline teachers just kind of standing behind her in a very loose kind of an illustrated interpretation. What I actually did was paint out in the negative space just these shapes that kind of looked a little, not human-like, I couldn't even say that, but in essence they had a head, a body, and some legs. And then from there I was going to place all of their features and all of their characteristics inside, kind of just going off of whatever shape I ended up painting. I think this is a great way to fill negative space. If you're allowing yourself to work a little bit abstract, it's easier to fill all of the negative space in the background, which I know is a struggle that a lot of people have. You kind of we get so tied up in working on what we want to feature on the page that we completely disregard the background or the setting or perhaps anything else that might be going on. So I wanted to see if allowing the style to be different was going to give an interesting effect. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. At the end, I look and I think painting those abstract shapes, kind of human-esque shapes in the background, did allow for some really odd-looking creatures, which was good. That was kind of what I was going for. But I still think there's a bit of a disconnect between the illustration styles. So maybe had I drawn just the outline of Daisy first, then drew all of those characters in their weird kind of shapes, and then gone back in and tried to tie in some of that with Daisy in the foreground, maybe would have brought it together a little bit. But I also think it's so open for interpretation. I mean, she expresses that her teachers are odd looking, so maybe it makes sense that they don't look like her, although I thought it might be more funny if they looked a little bit more like her, so maybe she thought herself was odd looking. That's something that I can look back on and think, oh, if I tried it again, maybe I would do it that way. So, pardon me. Wow, can you tell that I'm still struggling with all of this? Okay, I have to just level with you. I know I've been whinging about it for the past few days, but the headaches and the migraines are gone. Thank goodness. I woke up today a lot more level-headed, a lot more clear. Though I do still struggle with this post-nasal drip, and now I'm starting to get a little bit of a, I don't know, it does feel like a flu or a cold is coming on. I know everyone told me to get a flu shot, so I'm really hoping that it's not the flu. Because I don't want to have to sit there and realize that I could have avoided that. I'm just going to just be very careful, maybe go and drink a whole bunch of ginger or something. But either way, I am doing a lot better, so hopefully that's a good sign, and maybe it was just a really quick kind of couple of day thing. I feel really stressed at the moment, not gonna lie, just about a lot of stuff. And I think we were talking about this at church more recently, that stress and anxiety and all of these kind of pressures do take a physical toll on you. It's not one part of your body doesn't not necessarily communicate with the other, so it's only fair to say that if your brain is under a lot of pressure and stresses are really starting to manifest themselves in a big way, you do get physically tense and ache, and then kind of get these migraines because your brain is way too overactive about certain things. So hopefully, in trying to de-stress a little bit, and now knowing that I have finished all the Inktober pieces, I've only got Whimsy Ween stuff to do, which is just there's no specific upload schedule for Whimsy Ween, so it can be whatever I want it to be. I think that has kind of released a lot of that pressure, and now I can just feel a little a little clearer, a little more level-headed. It's so stupid too, because honestly, I get to choose whether I do this or not. So sometimes I think I could just choose not to, but I have a real complex with achievement, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I'm sure I have, but I get really driven by it, and it's almost not an option to do it if I've set out to do it. Like, I can't fathom quitting or giving up on it. I'd rather, you know, put myself in the hospital than quit. So it's kind of a challenge, and I'm going to definitely take some time when I go on holiday to hopefully look at that a bit and just address that and why I have such a severe anxiety over not even like achieving these goals, but like just finishing them, because it comes to a point sometimes where I do sit there and I think, well, I just need to get this done. So what if I just do something I know I can do? Just do something easy, which I think is a valid thing to do sometimes, but that's also not why I set out to do this. So am I kind of jeopardizing the process by changing my mindset about it? I'm not quite sure. Those are all things to unpack at a later date. Not for today, because I am feeling good today. So, thank you for bearing with me through all that whinging that I've been doing for the past couple of days. Believe me, I heard it and I was not impressed with myself, but feeling much better today. You have to check out, you don't have to, I mean, but if you're curious to, you have to check out today's Whimsy Ween video, because it was the polls where I put the Instagram polls up in my Insta story, and you voted and chose what I was going to be creating for today, and I haven't told anyone what it was. I did it last night where I wasn't thinking quite clearly, and it turned out so bizarre to me. Like, it is something I have never really tried before. It's a look that I'm not sure I'll ever try again. It is just bizarre, but I'm kind of happy that I have that kind of like saved on camera, like just seeing my process and how I try to work through this like migraine and all this pressure that I was having in my head. Like I thought it produced something really funny and bizarre, and I don't know, I'm not trying to do that again, believe me. I'm not trying to put myself in that position, but I think it was really funny to see how that all turned out, knowing that my headspace was in a bit of a weird place. So if you're curious to check that out, I would love for you to watch it, because it is quite bizarre, but I'm happy with it. I'm totally happy with it. I think it was really fun. I want people to take that challenge. If you're out make YouTube videos, or if you're into a bit of a challenge, even if you would just like some help prompts wise, or to get a bit of inspiration, or to be stimulated in some way, put on your Instagram an either or, like a 50-50 poll in your Insta story, and get your followers to choose what you end up creating. It's kind of like Ali Brown's Honey Slim Pickins, if you remember that from last year, where we would take our partners or significant others or a family member or something, a friend, and we would get them to choose 5 items from our craft supply that we would have to create something with. Now, looking back on that, I thought I did an okay job, but I look back at it now and I just think, oh my goodness, I could have done so many other things. I could have done it so much better. So who knows if we'll revisit that soon enough, but to me, this was kind of that same thing. But instead of having Steve choose 5 things from my supply, it was everyone on Instagram got to choose, and it was more like a toss-up. So I had 2 prompts that you could choose from, and people would vote on either or. So it was Harajuku Ween or Frankenfrieda from the Whimsy Ween prompts list this year, and then I had like acrylic paint or watercolor and gouache. It was acrylic and gouache or watercolor paint. I had pens and pencils, or no, that was it, pens or pencils. Wow, I mean, just go watch the video if you're curious. I don't know why I'm trying to break it down in this one, probably because I don't have a lot to say about this piece today, other than I kind of like how they turned out. The technique of kind of drawing those shapes and bodies in, I think some people might feel like was redundant because I colored the whole background in with that grey wash. The thing that I used that technique for was to come up with the characters in a way that would kind of fill that negative space evenly and look quite balanced in the page. So you can totally leave them like that if that's something that you want to do, but for me it was more a tool to get to a bit more of an odd place. I didn't want to just have their outlined bodies and be like, oh, these are just ink blots. I needed that to stimulate what the shape of those characters looked like, and made sure that they filled the space in a way that I felt like was even and balanced. So it was more of a technique to try, not so much an end result that I was going for, and I think that's probably the thing that I would take away from this more than anything. As far as these water painting, very loose, abstract things go, you can kind of melt them back into the page, blend them back in. I think watercolor would be even more effective, especially if it's not very staining. You can lift it back up and kind of move it all around. I think it would, really get you outside of your comfort zone as far as illustrating goes, but then put you right back into it once you wash all of that away. It's kind of, it's cheating a little bit, I guess. But at the same time, it's not. I mean, I drew this, but I had the help of those really abstract ink blots. So I think it's a really great thing to try, that water painting. If you're curious to try something new, that might be something that I suggest. And if you were going to take any reference from today's piece, then I would suggest outlining Daisy so you know where she's going to stay and stand, and actually putting her features in back at the end. You see, I went so heavy in with like the black, and her face was already so overly illustrated that I feel like there really is a disconnect between Daisy at the front and her teachers at the back, and it might be more of a fun look to have Daisy kind of connect in that way a little bit, to have some of those features bounce, from foreground to background. But that's just my own personal opinion. You might like the way that it looks like this, and I'd certainly have no problems with it, but it might be something that I would change if I attempted this again, which I absolutely will not. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say I won't in any other iteration ever in whole life, but definitely not for Inktober, because I have finished. Can you believe it? I know I've said this before, and I don't want you to think that it's something that I'm like, oh, I can't believe it, I'm so good, it's over. No, I just think the pressure and the anxiety of doing all the filming is what kind of adds an extra element to Inktober. It is, when you kind of look at it, the videos are 15 minutes long, but each one takes about an hour. Some are really quick. So I think the quickest one I did was about 18 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, but then with the setup, you're looking at about half an hour again. So, half an hour to an hour, let's just say average an hour, 31 pieces later, that's 31 hours of actually doing it. But then you've got to edit all the stuff together. You've got to put the voiceovers on. I put them at 15 minutes so they'd be really palatable to watch, and you could kind of like stream through them in a playlist. I do have an Inktober playlist if that's something you're just interested in looking at and having them all stream through the background as background noise. I don't know how far you'd get, but I'd be interested to know how far you got before you found me really annoying. I mean, I think I could watch a couple in a row. I do like watching my own videos sometimes. I think this is an interesting thing as well. If you do YouTube videos, or you make your own content available on social media, how do you feel when you watch it back or when you look at it? Because I used to cringe a lot. I used to think, oh, you're so annoying. Like, why are you saying that? And why did you think that was funny? Like, why did you laugh at that? Why are you always laughing all the time? But then when I watch it back, nowadays I have a bit more of an appreciation for it, probably because there's so much. I only watch the good ones. But especially the ones where my friends are involved, like, or even the podcast. When I listen to the one back of Danielle that we did on Patreon, like, that one just brings me such a good giggle. I watched the Halloween series from last year, and especially the one where Stella and I painted our faces. That literally cracks me up. And I feel sad because it's kind of dated, like, it's a year old now, and I feel like no one really cares about old content, or especially when you find a new channel, you're so interested in where people are at currently that you rarely go back to watch the start of stuff. I will say one thing, I have gone back into the archives of some creators that I followed, because I love, especially more recently talking about the journey that people have been on. I actually love to go back and watch from the beginning, or even go on their Instagram and scroll right back to the start and see the progression. And you find out a lot of stuff. Like, you find out where perhaps you see someone's style now, and you're noticing something, but you think, oh, it's just so particular, and like, I wonder how they came up with that. And then you go back years beforehand, and you see where it started, and then you see how it kept evolving and developing. And I think that is just fascinating. So there are a bunch of my favorite creators that I'm just going back through the archives, kind of watching and seeing their development. It's also super inspiring to see that whole process for somebody. So I'm not saying that you have to do that with me, but if you want to, it's only been a year, so I don't know what you're really going to find. But the Halloween series from last year is something that I'm enjoying. Just because it's Halloween time, I get to indulge myself a little bit. Anyway, hope you liked the piece today. I'll be back this afternoon for a Whimsy Ween video where you get to see what you all chose for me to come up with in my cloudy mental state. It was very appropriate. I think you could tell that I was in that place, even if I didn't tell you, but I'll definitely mention it. Alrighty, I'll see you this afternoon. Bye!